Bada bing, bada boom. All right, we are live. I feel like Joe Rogan. Thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight. I'm your host, Pace. My first name is William, but I go by Brennan, so I'm a whole mess. I'm going to quit trying to be a DJ and just introduce Mike Smith. He's a tech guru, I guess. I don't know what his
Guru. Kill
everything.
anybody who
Yeah,
says that they're a
says
guru.
guru. So I'm going to be assassinated. Thank you all. And that's recorded. But anyway, I'm going to quit stumbling over my words. Thank you for joining us. And thank you, Mike, for offering to do this talk. I'm not going to even try to explain what you're talking on tonight, but it's going to go until about 8 o'clock-ish. We'll probably, what you want to do, give your talk and then open it to questions, or
Yeah. Just the
we'll
normal,
just,
the
yeah,
normal setup.
normal thing. So without further
Okay.
ado, take it away.
Okay. Cool. So just a quick poll on everybody. I can talk engineering challenges. I can talk Python. I can talk threat intelligence. What's everybody here for? So I'm just curious, and that'll help me just steer a little bit on what I'm doing. So today I am talking on Phishing-Rod, and Phishing-Rod is a piece of software that I wrote. I actually have, so I not a big surprise. I lived in Singapore. One of the guys in Singapore, he runs the Singapore CERT, and kind of is their, I don't know, troubleshooter for things gone wrong, in special projects. But he was working with a tool that did something similar. And you'll actually see when we get to the GitHub project, his slides are there. He put them up on GitHub. I grabbed them, started reading through them. And, I know Doug, or Douglas. I know him. I've worked with him on a couple different projects. And I was pretty impressed when he was working on his code in the middle of a conference that we were at. And I was like, okay, that's pretty cool. But then he isn't able to actually release any software because he works for the government. So he's got a lot of restrictions on that. So I said, I asked him and said, hey, when are you going to release code? And I didn't get an answer. And I was like, oh, is it because you work for the government and you can't release code? And he's like, yeah. So I said, okay, well, I'll just clean room a version of it, and let's see what we can do. And that became Phishing-Rod. So the name is his. I just took his GitHub slides, forked them into a different project, and then started throwing up code on it. This is me. I clean up nice. I actually do wear a suit, but when I wear a suit in Singapore, they get really freaked out. Yeah, I do some Linux stuff. I do some Unix stuff. I advise a lot of startups. Okay. I'm actually taking Phishing-Rod and using it I have a fork of it that dumps everything into a database that I'm then testing all the entries for liveness. So that way I can find, a lot of storefronts that are selling products that our customers are selling. Okay. So a refresher on DNS, because right. So really what I'm doing is I'm taking the zone files from the TLDs and working with them in order to find things. Okay. Usually it's domains that are similar to somebody else's domain. And I'll show you what that looks like. So out of this, where these people are here. You talk to a recursive resolver. There might be a cache in there someplace that forwards. But that resolver has something called the root hints, which tell it where to find the root zones. Okay, so they're, a dot root or a root all the way through like Z root or something. So it queries the root servers and says, who is .com? They respond back with an answer and says, oh, .com is, here's an IP address or a series of IP addresses. The resolver goes to the TLD, so that's top level domain. So that's .com, .org, .edu, whatever. Ask for, who is example.com, gets an answer back. That answer is actually in the name servers for example.com. The resolver goes and asks the name servers for example.com, who is prod. That actually is a subdomain in this example, gets a response back. Who are the name servers for that subdomain? And then um, goes to the authoritative server for that subdomain and asks them, and finally gets an answer, gets an IP address answer back. Okay, that's the process. Now, the thing that's really, really cool is that these TLD zones for anything that's not a country level TLD. So the country level TLDs are .us, .uk, .ca for Canada, .mx for Mexico, .sg for Singapore. Those I don't have access to, but I can. Who's the what are they? Network names. I even forget what the ICANN means. Um, but they're the authority for names, right? So for domain names, and they have a service called the centralized download service that allows you to go grab all of the TLDs that are not the country level TLDs. So you can get this zone file that's here on the TLD authoritative servers, which tells you the name servers for all of the domains inside of that TLD. That's awesome stuff. And you can work with it. And the whole idea, and let me show you what these things look like. So this is what the top of it looks like. So you see, this is .com from a couple days ago. And you'll see, so this is com, and here's all the start of authority and who the name servers are, what the name server that actually is hosting this at, and some timing parameters and a serial number and stuff. But in this case, you have this domain, which is 0 dash 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 whatever 0.com. And the name servers are domain IT, domain IT. Okay. Same domain, and he's got two name servers, right? Each domain has to have two name servers. Might have more, but it has to have a minimum of two. And then here is this other one, which is whatever 5.com. And the DNS for that is frogsmart.net. And then that just keeps going on, right? These are up at the top because it's .com, and .com has all the weird things in it. Okay. But this is what it looks like. And these here, these NS records, these are actually what we call a glue record. And all they do is, oh, if you want to talk to what, 0.com, go check this name server to find out who is www or who is, SMTP or email or whatever. And so you can do some things out of this. But really what I want to look at right now is I want to look at what are all the domains that are registered for that top level domain, right? And what can I use it for, right? So the obvious one is, well, phishing, spam, and malware, right? So can I, and this is the basic use case that I started with, we'll get into other use cases, but can I go find for each of Cialis, Viagra, Tesla, um, adult sex, whatever, can I find domains that have those words in them and proactively block them? Okay. I have a friend who's a security manager at Tesla. He looked at, he actually was on Twitter and said, hey, I wish there was a way I could find out typo sites for my domain. And I said, yeah, I got a tool that does that. But what he was looking for was typo domains that look like tesla.com for business email compromise. So basically, if you're going to impersonate the CEO, you would get a domain that looks a lot like the target domain, and then send an email from CEO at, right, or whatever the CEO's email address. But it wouldn't be the CEO at the real domain. It would be the same email address, the same user ID at whatever this typo domain is, just to see if the CFO doesn't realize that that's the wrong domain. Okay. Intellectual property enforcement, that's what I'm doing a lot of work on right now, which is find me all the domains that look like Samsung. Okay, that's the one that I did last night. Find me all the domains that look like Samsung, and then for each of those domains, which of them has a storefront? Okay, which of them have a members only login? Um, which ones are interesting that we actually need to monitor to see if they're selling counterfeit property. Okay. Or, counterfeit or expired or, gray market type stuff. You can also run through and say, I have a domain. I know that this domain hosts malware and it uses this name server. So go through all of the domains that exist that I have access to and tell me which other domains use that same name server. Okay. I know some folks that have done domain generation algorithm work doing the same way. So you say, show me all of the domains that don't have that are just a random, like they're just random junk. Okay. So you can get an algorithm that says, is it an English word or a Chinese, is it a Chinese word? Is it a real word that humans use, or is it just random junk? Look at what the name servers are. Show me all of the other domains that have the same name server, and you can start to cluster all these DGAs into one bucket, and then go back and you can block them. You can go investigate them, see what's there. You can look for incidences where they have been actually requested by your endpoints. There are lots of different things that you can do with that. Let's see. Yeah, and you can build your own intelligence sources so you can look for, let's see. I have a pet peeve about threat intelligence, and that is because I lived in Asia. And most threat intelligence is US centric and it's US bank centric. So if I am living in Singapore, the government has a single sign in for all their government services, but um, um, nobody else collects that information unless they have sensors, because the only place that fraud against that domain happens is inside of Singapore. Okay. So they have, like, each country has their own critical infrastructure key resources that they should be monitoring. And this is one way that you can check to see when people are building phishing domains for the kicker in your country, right? You can also build stuff like my friend at Tesla. He could actually build out monitoring for their own domains to find where these, to find typosquatting incidents. Okay. This is the centralized zone data service. I'm going to exit out of that. Go back to that. Let me show you what this thing looks like. Okay. So it's just czds.icann.org/home. The links are in the slides. I'll give you the slides. Don't worry about it. You sign in. Maybe. By the way, the internet hates me because I tested like 130,000 websites last night. So this is what CZDS gives you. It gives you a dashboard. You can, these are all the different requests that I have. You just go in and you say, create new request. Here, you won't see that I have anything available because I picked the all domains and sent a request. So you'll say, there'll be a little box right here. And you say, yes, all domains. Request access to all of the domains will pop up over here on this box on the right hand. Reason for requesting access, research on typosquatting, intellectual property enforcement, and spam. Done. Okay. And then send that thing off. And then what will happen is, over the course of a while, they will come in and approve. Okay. So some TLDs get approved right away. Some of them, take, like, I've made the big request maybe a week ago, and you'll see down here I've got two pages that have yet to be approved. Some of these I don't care, right? So Lamborghini, you know what? There's one country that owns it. Kiwi is interesting, like most of these are either places like Helsinki, or they're companies. .inc I'd like to have. Right. And then there are like keywords. The big ones that I want, that are actually listed on the project. I think I killed I killed the node in there. The big ones that I want are .com, .shop, .info, .biz, those ones, because they have a higher rate of fraud. Douglas, who I got the idea from, he said that he finds a lot of fraud on .cricket. I haven't seen that, but I think it might also be a South Asia thing. The rest of the U.S. doesn't know what cricket is yet. But you go in and so you go in, you make your request, and then things show up on your dashboard. The ones that are approved here. So out of that, I've got 10 pages of zones that have been approved. I checked the other day; it was 1,000 different zones that I'm downloading. That's how you make the requests. Okay. Then there's a tool that ICANN has released. That's the CZDS, right? So the Central Zone Download System or Download Service API Client. They've got a Python version. They've got a Java version in this repo right here. You just set that thing up. You just download the project. You take the config file, you copy it over to, or the config.example, you copy that over to the config, you give it your username and your password, and that thing runs and downloads. Okay. And then you just call it and you just say, run the downloader, Python 3 download.py, and it will go ahead and grab all of the zones that you're authorized to have and put them into a directory that you specify. Okay. If you look at the config sample here, really easy. It's just your email addresses, your user ID, you put your password in here. And then this is where I'll do it like that. This is where the zone file will actually be saved to. Okay. What does that thing look like? It looks like this one's the best. So it looks like this. You get a bunch of start. You get a bunch of gzip files. They look like that. Okay, so it's just whatever the zone is. Each TLD is going to be in its own little text file that's gzipped. I think it's about, I did this on slides here. Let me catch up with myself. Okay, so the gzips themselves are 5.5 gigabytes. So on my home connection, it takes me 10 to 12 minutes to download all the 1,000 plus that I have. Once they're unzipped, it's 29 gigs. That becomes a problem because of volume. Then I have a utility that does rotation. So what I do, and I'll get into this in just a little bit, but what I do is I unzip them and then I make a daily diff from basically what's the difference between today and yesterday. Because once I've searched through the entire zone file, I wanted to make it faster. So I will do the compare and do all the typosquatting search using the daily diff. So it uses less resources, right? And then let's see. So that is, I'm catching up with myself here. Okay. And let me go back to like that. Yeah. Like that. So the total size. So this is disk used in megabytes for everything that's text. So that's the unzipped zone file. And show me the 10 largest ones, right? So sort of show me the 10 largest ones. Com.txt is 20 gigs. It gets down to what, 2.5 gigs for Wang. It's a Asian Chinese thing. But you'll see like these are the big ones that have been around that everybody uses, right? Like .app, .org, .net I added. There was another one that was a really famous. I think I added .edu, which is also a big one. Okay. And then this is just how many entries do I have? And I go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So there is 521 million entries that those are lines in the zone file. Some of them are signatures, some of them are the start of authority, but it's pretty close to that. So I've got 521 million domains that I can actually search through. And then com itself is 1, 2, 3, 370 million domains just inside of .com. Okay, so here comes Phishing-Rod. So Phishing-Rod is a piece of software I wrote that it manages the zone files and it searches through the zone files for looking for typosquatting. Okay, so I've got unzip and diff.py, and that rotates the file. So what I do is you guys can read. So I take the current, so I download the tar.gz, right, or the .text.gz over all of the existing ones in the zone file directory. I gunzip to a text. I copy the current .text to .text.old. Then I unzip that gzip file and clobber the zone file .text, and I still keep the gzip file. I use com, which is a Unix utility. It was actually made by Richard Stallman. And what it does is it does a bitwise compare of files. Originally, I was using diff, right? So diff, like everybody uses, you can use diff. And so you do diff this file, diff that file, or diff this file, that file, and it'll give you all the differences. And there's a flag in there, it's like none or something, that will suppress all of the lines and the counts and all that, all the extra stuff that it puts on. And it'll just give you a new file that has the lines, the new lines in the new file. Okay, but the problem is that when you work on a 26 gigabyte file, diff reads new file, old file into memory and then compares between the two, which is really cool because it can do multi-line and things like that. But the problem is if it's 25 gigs a file and you try to read two 25 gig files into memory, you run out of memory really quickly. So I was having problems where things would crash. It'd get up and get going, and it would do .aaa, totally no problem because that's a small zone. And then it would get to .com and it would just go and die on me. So I spent maybe a day trying to figure out how to compare two files without actually reading them. So reading them as a stream and doing the comparison. And the only thing that I found that could do it is com. Okay. So then I make a diff. I actually called it diff, even though it's not a true diff. But so for each top level domain, I make a .diff. That's my daily difference, or at least the difference between the last time I downloaded and now. And then I run the split command to take these large texts, a large .text, and large diffs. So sometimes the diffs are large for .com, and I break those into smaller pieces. And the reason why is that when you run multi-processing, right? So I would read multiple files at the same time, but .com was always the biggest file, and it would, like, all the other processes would finish, and I'd end up waiting around for .com. So I started breaking up the larger files so that I could use multi-processing more effectively. Okay. Then I have main.py. I give it a file. I load a file I just call it domains and trademarks, and I put what are the domains and trademarks that I'm interested in, right? So for testing, I use Tesla, Viagra, Cialis. I think that's it. I have done comparisons on Samsung. For I've kind of found that when you're doing typosquatting, you have to have like a unique trademark or a unique domain. If you just look for something like AIG or BOA, it doesn't really work because that matches so much stuff. So Things like if I wanted to search for a Samsung Galaxy Tab, Galaxy itself is very common usage, but Galaxy Tab, that I could actually go search for. So that's what I did, right? I tried to find words, domains, and trademarks that were relatively unique, not in common speech, that wouldn't give me a lot of false positives. Okay. And then, so what I do is I've got that file that's got all the domains and trademarks. I read that into memory. Then I go line by line through each of the, either the .text, the full zone file, or through the diff. And I use a library called Quick Fuzz. Okay. I started with Fuzzy Wuzzy. But what it does is fuzzy matching. So fuzzy matching is I have a word or a phrase, and here's a phrase, and what's the overlap between those two phrases? And the reason that I use that library is I'm looking for words that are, maybe they're one or two characters off of this longer word. Okay. Where I started out saying, okay, let me go through all the permutations of that particular word. And what I found is that the fuzz library just takes care of it. Like it would find all the stuff. I wouldn't have to do all the permutations of the word itself. Okay. Um, let's see, full file was just split file. And then I drop the results into bad domains. Okay. Pretty easy. So when I run testing, I'll just build for each, customer that I want to test. I'll build a domains and trademarks file for them specifically. And then I will, I've got a command flag to spit out a file that has all of the matches. Okay. I'll show you guys what that looks like here. Let me get out of here, go back to here. So this is what this thing looks like. So you see, I did White Claw. Okay, so White Claw, you'll see there, it just has White Claw in it. That's easy. So bad domains White Claw, and there you go. There is a huge list of typo squatters with White Claw. Okay, that's not too bad. It's not too bad. Now, some of these are going to actually be White Claw, right? So if we scroll up here someplace, there will be whiteclaw.com, and that is actually the legitimate site, right? Some of these are marketing sites. Obviously, the next step of this would be for each typo like domain, go ahead and do a liveness test to see if are they actually a domain? Do they serve content, or are they dead? And if they do serve, drunkonclaw.com. Yeah, some of these do get fun. There was one that I posted the other day that was, what was it? My Tesla got an anal probe by aliens or something. I was like, what the heck? Yeah, and some of these are just like fan sites where somebody, White Claws in Warzone. There you go. There you go. White Claws in Warzone. So some of these have similar content. Some will have no content at all. Some will be, you'll get a drive-by download if you go there, right? Because it's a malware. It's a malware domain. No laws with claws. Yeah. It's alphabetical, I think. So yeah, no laws for White Claws. No law, White Claw. There are a couple in there, man. Yes, someone said White Claws. So yeah, right. I find these kind of things. Like, let's see. So for Samsung. Do I have a Samsung in here? Yeah. Domains and trademarks. There you go. Okay. Right. So I used things that would be that I try that I would add some kind of qualifier to Galaxy because I couldn't just search for Galaxy and I couldn't search for, book by itself. So I tried to, when I register these, I usually look for flagship products, like things that people would find interesting. Do I have any fun ones in here? Let's see. Nah, I don't have any I don't have any of the really fun ones. No, I don't have any of the real fun ones. The real fun ones are on my production system. This is just the testing. This is just the testing setup here. So let me go back on slides. Whoop. Okay. And then problems and interesting things. So because the files are so big, I have to read them from the file, read through them line by line instead of reading the entire file into memory, which would be a faster search. Except I have to have disk IO, right? Like I still have to have disk IO to load the file. But because the files are so big, even when I have 64 gigs of RAM in my computer, I still have to go line by line through that file, just to be kind to my memory. I end up using a lot of processor because of the fuzzy matching. Using diff files to check the daily difference. So when I say, okay, I just made a domains and trademark file, and this is the first time I'm checking against it, I'll go do a full check. But if it's if I've already checked, and I just want to, I refresh my zone files, do the file rotation, and then I want to go check again, same list of domains and trademarks, then I'll run it against the diff. Okay, because I just want to know the domains that have changed. I've already checked the full setup. Move transforms out of the read file loop. So I used to have, I did a lot of optimization with this thing. My runtime used to be 7 hours, which was crazy. And so I did some things to actually take the runtime down to something that was more achievable, like 20 minutes. And for a diff, it's maybe 5 to 7 minutes. But what I did, one of the things that I optimized was I had a loop for each line in the file. I would do computations on the domains and trademarks that I was looking for. And just last week, I took those transforms and did them once, basically move them out of that read the file line by line loop. So that way the whole thing got faster. Okay. It's just like a little bit here and there, but it added up over the course of, 500 million iterations. Just that little bit improved the speed a lot. You couldn't use standard diff. I talked a lot about that, where diff reads into memory, so it was dying, and I would end up with these small little diff files that didn't work for me. That's an interesting design and consideration in diff itself. There is a diff for big files. There is a command line parameter. It's like literally, I think it's like big file. It's like dash big file. That actually wouldn't work either. It still was having problems reading into memory. I turned on multiprocessing. Okay, so multiprocessing. There's a Python library that basically says there are a couple libraries, but basically what they say is use multiple processors instead of just one. Okay, cool enough. So I use that because the biggest bottleneck in terms of performance was CPU time to do the fuzzy computation. So I split it out, and I did a lot of things to count the number of processors that I had. So there's a function to tell, okay, how many processors do I have? Now use all of the processors except for 2, and then spawn a different process for all of those processors that we want to use. It still gave me a lot of disk IO. So then I had to fix that. But it actually sped things up a lot, just because I could use a lot more processors instead of being single threaded. Okay. But then all the other processes, like everything would run and be done, and I'd end up waiting for .com for forever. So then I started breaking up these larger files into pieces so that um, I could get through them all faster, and it would basically load balance that processing across all of the processors that I have. So as soon as one process is finished, it spawns another process over the top of it. Fuzzy Wuzzy library, I looked around and said, you know, Google programming. How do I make Fuzzy Wuzzy faster? And I found a guy who wrote this library called QuickFuzz, and he said, yeah, Fuzzy Wuzzy is really slow. Use mine. It's faster. It's faster. It takes 20% of the time that Fuzzy Wuzzy does. And I said, okay, cool. And it's completely compatible with Fuzzy Wuzzy. So I turned off Fuzzy Wuzzy, turned on QuickFuzz. It just worked. It worked, and it worked really well. So that shaved a lot of time off the processing. Um, I used to do multi-processing where I'd say, call the matching algorithm, but here's the file and here's the word you're going to match against. And that worked if I only had one file, but if I had multiple, or it worked if I only had one word to search against. But if I had a list of 20 words, then the way that I had it called would actually read each file 20 times. So that was crushing me with disk IO. So then I refactored that particular function so that I have one list of words and I just read each file once and run that list of words against each file. And that gave me a huge increase in speed and brought a lot of my runtime down. And then working with domains, I got to pop up there. Working with domains requires a liveness test. So for everything that I get back as a match, I need to go validate that is a particular site, right? Is there content on that site? I would say about half of the typo sites that I find are dead for some reason. They're old, they're expired. Somebody bought the domain and it's parked. I find a lot of those. Somebody bought the domain and um, they just didn't set up any content for it, right? They just wanted to own it. They didn't even park it. It's just dead. I find a lot of those. So I took what I had and I forked it into a version that has a database. I've got a table for customers. I've got a table for the domains and trademarks that they own. I've got a table for all of the match Typosquatting domains. I have another project that I have that does Google searches for storefronts that match the particular customer. And then I have another routine that goes through and says, grab each line in the database, go see if you can find a website with content. And if you can, then grab all the text out of that HTML page and compare it to the keywords for that particular trademark. And if they match, then say that the content is similar enough. Okay. If the content matches, then go look to see is there a storefront. Let's see, is there a storefront? Is there a login? Or is it just similar content? Okay. So I have statuses like dead, live, alike. So it has similar content. Storefront, login. I'm starting to get into news. So it's a news article about so it matches text wise, but it's a news site, so I don't care. Those are all my status codes. Okay. So I'm working on that behind the scenes. Okay. And that's all that I have for this. The code itself, right? It's on GitHub. You can grab it. You can use it. I think there are, I did this talk for two reasons. Number one, there's software, go grab it. You can use it. You can go, build your own list of domains and trademarks looking for typical spam terms, right? And then go block those domains. You can go take your own company domains and start looking for domains that look like your company's domains. Okay. The other reason why I wanted to talk to everybody about this is that you can go do your own research. It's kind of like, here's the hobby kit to go do your own research, get a hold of the zone files, and you can start doing some of the things like the DGAs. Maybe like, can you identify spam hosting providers? Can you identify like all these other cool things that then turns into research that you can go, you could go talk on elsewhere and share with people. Okay, there we are. Yes. Does anybody have any questions?
If you have any questions, just feel free to unmute yourself and speak away.
Everybody's scared.
I guess. Or they just are like me and can't
Are you
think of
floating?
anything.
You're like, wow, I'm in so much above, like the water is so much above my head.
Someone asked if you're accepting pull requests.
Oh yeah. That is a Jace. Yeah, I'll take it. Like let's see. I have the basic core functionality. It's been pretty stable except for the optimizations for speed. The basic concept is there. Additional ideas on things that could be improved. Yeah, totally. Like I'll gladly take those. Anything you have that's interesting, that's related, let's do it. Okay. Interesting, fun things. Cialis. Okay. Erection pills. Cialis matches with specialist, and it matches with socialist. So for Cialis, because specialist has Cialis inside of it. Okay. So I get all these weird, eyeball specialists, automobile repair specialists. Cialis has a lot of false positives to it. And then there's weird socialist ones that like come up because socialist has Cialis inside of it. It's just humorous nerd things that I find while I'm working with all this stuff. Okay, so where do you go with this? Number one, understand that this stuff is out there. Get a CZDS account. Pick the domains that you're interested in. If you need to know, if you're curious which domains to ask for, let me know. I can give you a hint there, but you kind of got the basic idea. Start downloading zone files, working with them. Even if you don't use my tool to go search through, you could use a different way. You could download the zone files and just grep through them, and that would work. Not as cool, but you could just grep through them. But just to know that stuff is there, you can use it. It's a resource. People turn around and they do this exact same thing and they sell it as a service. Okay. So maybe at some point in the future, this is the start of a business.
So Mike, you said something about that. What was the website that you went to download those files? Did you have to sign up for that, and does it cost anything?
You sign up. You have to sign up. That like,
how much does it cost? Is it
zero?
Free?
Free.
I like freebies.
Yeah. Free is good.
Yeah.
Okay. Free is really, really good. And they don't even really check who you are. Like they let anybody with an email address sign up. Or how about this? They didn't check who you are because they obviously gave me an account. They didn't know what kind of a scumball I am. So, in fact, I have two accounts. I have one for myself for research, and I have one for production environment that I use. So, yeah, anybody can go sign up and get an account and start downloading zone files. Okay. You could even do it like if you use domain tools or some of the other stuff, you could build your own like tools to record the history of domains, when they change name servers. You'd have to grab some information from whois, like when were they registered and stuff like that. But you could start building out your own domain tools if you really wanted to.
Crickets.
All right. By the way, I will run White Claw. I'll go in and run White Claw again with the full set of zones. I did my testing environment here. I only have 48 zones. I mean, they're the big ones, right? So if we do some files, I mean, if you look at like the ones that I have, best is pretty scammy. Buy is pretty scammy. Shopping, sucks might be kind of interesting. .com, obviously, because everybody wants .com. Deals, which I thought was funny that they added the two TLDs when one has an S. Man, that's like a money grab for somebody there. Same with fans and fan. But those are the common ones that get abused. But I'll run White Claw on the full set of stuff and see what kind of humorous ones I could come up with, and then I'll dump it on everybody in Slack. All right. And with that, folks, thanks for coming. Hopefully everybody learned anything. If you're shy and don't know how to ask questions, you know how to find me. I'm pretty easy to find, other than having a name of Michael Smith, which you can't find on Google. But otherwise, I'm easy to find. Check Slack.
All right, and with that, I'm going to probably stop recording. We'll leave it up here for probably about 10 minutes or so if you want to ask questions or whatever, and we'll go ahead and turn this off.